we have a lot of information to share with you and not a lot of time. So we're going to do a couple things, but we're going to start with a deep breath. That mindfulness thing really spoke to us. So let's all take a deep breath. Process that information. So we went out and actually had the opportunity to ask our community across the industry what their experience was. And we want to take a moment to thank CAT, thank the brands, thank the agencies, and actually the talent themselves, because if it wasn't large enough, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yep, so thanks to all of you. I just want to echo what Leeson said, and thank you all for responding. Thank you for growing this movement to be large and substantial enough that we could do some groundbreaking research like that. So with that, let's tell them what we did.
So what we did is we went out to our community. We got 328 women responding. The majority of those women were actually Gen X's. Some, quite a few, were also boomers, not as many millennials, which is interesting. We also found that the majority of them were in the agency. What was interesting is we had about 40% were non-creatives and 60% were creatives. And in those creatives, we actually had 20% of female leadership, which gave us a lot of interesting data as a result of all of that. What we're going to do is give you sort of the 5 key takeaways from the research. And trust me, we could spend hours telling you about all the great information we gathered, but we really drilled it down to 5 key takeaways. We're going to give you, the agencies, some real actionable items about what you can do. And in fact, interestingly, I loved our panel just beforehand because it really, boy, they just teed us up with stuff that you guys can take away. Then, as Kat said, we're going to announce some exciting new programs from 3%. So let's top line it. Erin, the mood from our respondents.
So it's not that bad, actually. It's actually pretty good. When we asked a whole slew of different indicators on job satisfaction, on those things that make you want to go work at a certain place, and then the things that make you want to stay, what's important to you. And what we found were that you're making good money. There's 56% of you are making $100,000 a year or more. You like the work. 44% of you said that the reason that you stay where you are for more than 3 years is that you're working on projects that you really enjoy. You like the people. 58% of you, that's 56 and 58, I keep flipping. 58% of you said the reason that you'll stay at a certain agency is because you just love the people that you work with. You like the culture, and this was a really strong stat. 70% of those that we interviewed said that they would recommend their current workplace to a friend. And we know that, I'd tell a friend to do it is a really strong indicator of how happy you are. And you like your jobs. 78% said that they were satisfied with their current role at their current workplace.
Sounds great, right? We're done. Time to go home, ladies. Yeah, no. So here, it all sounds good, but sort of like a fish doesn't know they're swimming, we might not know what's happening in our world. What we discovered, in fact, that of those respondents, a full 30% have no female leaders at top at all in creative leadership. And of that, sorry, clicking, we're click teaming here. I don't have one, I'm just pretending. 60% say that their agency, so 60% say their agency is below the new 11% standard. So how can they actually be that satisfied?
So what's takeaway 1? Takeaway 1 is that we think, and actually we know, that it can be way better than it is. Things sound pretty good, but we know it can be better. Made us kind of wonder as we were looking through this, is the happiness bar or the satisfaction bar just set a little bit too low? We're not really sure, but let's look in a little more, let's put a little pin in that and talk some more about what we do know from the data that we have. And what we do know is that when we dove deep and looked at some different subgroups, because you're not all the same, right? We talked to all different types of people in the 3% community, of women in the 3% community. What you're seeing here is the pink bar represents those in creative roles, and the gray are those in non-creative roles. And we can see here that creatives are overall less satisfied with their current job. They're more likely to report experiencing gender discrimination at their current workplace. They're less likely to stay where they are, and they're more likely to stay, they feel stuck where they are. I want you to zone in on that part where we have segmented on that first set of bars. That satisfaction bar combines very and somewhat satisfied. But when you look at the very satisfied, only 16% of those in creative roles say that they're very satisfied with their current role. And that number is more than double for those in non-creative roles. So something's going on there. But we know that some people are staying. So when we asked those who have been at the agency where they are for more than 3 years, why? What made you stay? Regardless of the type of role that you're in, creative, non-creative, people matter. Everybody wants to work with great people, and it's a key factor in keeping people where they are. But there are some differences when we get down below that. For creatives, it's more about making good money, having good benefits, and having great projects to work on. Whereas for non-creatives, it was more about feeling this sense of loyalty to the agency where they are, or just genuinely saying that they're happy where they work.
So that begs the question then, sort of what's that second takeaway? The second takeaway is really, obviously, creatives are different, which then makes us wonder if perhaps agencies shouldn't be tailoring specific programs for their creatives, something to put a pin in and think about as we're moving forward in terms of thinking about retention and acquisition. Okay, so they report that they're less satisfied. They report that they're actually not as loyal, but they are staying, obviously. So we asked the community, what is it that's making you stay? What are the key attributes that make you want to be in a workplace? We gave them 15 options, and we sort of thought, hey, what will rise to the top? And interestingly, 5 things really rose to the top. Positive workplace culture, strong compensation, inclusive workplace culture, being able to not only get to leadership, be able to interact and access leadership, and then also just having reasonable work demands. Thank you, Mike Roth, for that. It's great. We're all going on vacation. So the point is that they really, really, really have strong, powerful desires here. But what was fascinating to us is, frankly, one measure really stood out, and that was salary. Erin, tell us what we learned.
Well, what we saw, again, none of these were hugely surprising, but when you think, and just to point out on these bars, they're segmented by very and somewhat important. So the very is the tippy top part, and the somewhat is the next, and then the number at the top is the combination, just so you know what you're looking at there. But we were a little surprised to see compensation so high, because so much of what we hear, what we see, what we read, what's directed to us as professional working women is really more about work-life balance, flexibility, job sharing, being able to work from home, things like that, all hugely important, not to minimize those, but we don't hear a lot of talk about the money. And what we see from our data is that money matters to women. What you're making is important to you, just like it is to men, shocker. So we dug a little deeper and we said, how are so many things kind of missing the mark on this? And the reason why salary may be so important to you is because you're supporting your households. 53% of the women in the survey are the primary breadwinner for their household. And a full 91% have either primary or shared breadwinning responsibilities. So when you think about that you have to be responsible for supporting a household, of course you care about the salary.
Well, so 53% are primary breadwinners. That's well above the national average. There was one other piece of research that came through to us, which was a little bit of a surprise, and we'd love to dive down more into it, and that is that there were very few mothers at the top. And actually mothers in the responding thing anyways. I saw a bunch of pregnant women. Rock on, ladies. Retaining talent, I love what's happening at Huge. That and how it relates to caregiving and mothers and fathering is going to be the next big wave of what we can do. We don't have a lot of information on this with this piece of research, and we can't wait to do more research around this issue and provide you with actual solutions. But moving back to what we did learn, what's our third takeaway? Money matters. And it's not just money, it's transparency around money. So I love to hear what Beth was doing with her agency and how they're making change and being very transparent. The other thing that you saw from those 5 attributes of why they stayed was culture. And we had some, frankly, disturbing news around culture.
Yeah, and so when you think about culture, that's inclusive culture is sort of a high-level term, and it's hard to kind of unpack that a little bit. But we know when we're talking about an inclusive culture, some very basic things are a place where you feel safe, protected, included, part of the team, a place where you can create and thrive. And so the thought of anyone having to encounter anything negative like discrimination or harassment is really disturbing. Unfortunately, though, we did see that a quarter of the people who responded to our survey said that they had personal experience with gender discrimination at their current workplace. Additionally,
25%.
Yeah, 25%. And we know that discrimination and harassment are underreported always, so just factor that in when you're looking at the numbers. Additionally, 23% say that they either personally experienced or observed sexual harassment in their current workplace. And the perpetrators of the harassment were male peers, were bosses, managers, executive level men, and clients. And we know that last one adds a whole other layer of complexity.
So, are you guys hearing the background staccato? Yeah, they're like,
our music,
go,
background
say. Anyways, here's what was really concerning. 29% reported that agencies actually tried to hush it up and keep it quiet when they actually had it. Only 8% reported that the agency did anything at all. They certainly didn't fire or punish the people, and only 4% reported that the agency actually spoke about it. Now let's be clear, when this kind of harassment occurs, it's not necessarily that private. People know, people talk about it, and so having that kind of environment really speaks to culture and what culture could be and maybe what it isn't yet. We had some quotes, people wrote in some opinions and thoughts, and here's what they said. It was never addressed. I'm too used to it in this business. It's a daily occurrence. Now, I'm sorry, but if you're telling me the workplace culture is one of the 2 key factors for you, and in fact, what you're finding out is that it's pretty hostile, that's not good. So takeaway number 4, culture matters, but it's a safe and inclusive culture that really matters for our community. Okay, so that's a little bit of a Debbie Downer, we get it. Mm-hmm. There is good news and some fantastic news about the importance and power of strong female leaders.
Yeah, we saw some really great stuff emerge here. So I want to set up the next few slides by telling you what we're looking at. We asked everybody what percentage of the creative directors at their agency are women. And unfortunately, the numbers at the top were very, very small, as we know, as we already set up. But we tried to see where we could sort of cut things in half to see what's happening when there are more leaders that are women and what's happening when there are fewer leaders that are women. And the magic number here, just in terms of giving us enough sample to look at, was 25%. So the next few numbers that we're going to show you have to do with agencies. When we say agencies with more women, those are agencies where at least 25% of the creative directors are female. And the less agency, the less women side, is those that have less than a quarter of the creative directors. So a quarter. We're not even talking about parity here. We're just talking about a quarter, the emergence of a little bit more female leadership. And what we see is some really interesting trends start to emerge. First, we'll look at the percentage of women who have experienced discrimination. And we see that a huge difference here in those who have never, this is the number who have never experienced discrimination. So 82.5% of those at agencies where there are more women in leadership roles have never experienced any discrimination at their workplace. And that number is down to 66% at the agencies where there are fewer women. So there's just less discrimination happening when you have more female leaders. Additionally, make more money. When there are, again, just over a quarter of the CDs being women, we see that 64% of women make over $100,000 a year, and it's down to 54% for those where there are fewer women leaders. And there's more parity in the work. We asked, what happens with the most desirable projects? Are they evenly split between men and women? Do they go to more men? Do they go to more women? Those were the options that people had. And at those agencies where there are more women in creative director roles, we see that 72.5% say that they're evenly they're evenly distributed between men and women. And it's down to 47% at those agencies where there are fewer female leaders. So let's be real clear here. This isn't anything bad for the men. This is good for everybody. This is parity we're talking about. So we really start to see the impact.
So look, here's what we know. Female leaders, and the data proves it. We believed it, but now the data is proving that when we have female leaders, we get less discrimination, so better workplaces. We get more money, which really deeply matters to us, as we know, and the work is more fairly distributed and rewarding. So what's takeaway number 5? Women leaders matter. So that brings us back to our original question. What do women want? We know that there might be an understanding that that there might be this sort of unconscious sense of what they want because they don't even know what it's like to be in an environment where there is parity or even close to parity. But we have now proven to ourselves and proven, we hope, to your community that what women want really is more women leadership. It's just obvious. So, those are our takeaways. That's what women want. So now the question is, what can agencies do? And now look, we know the people we're here, or we're speaking to the converted, that you guys are all doing great things and have more, have things to teach us about what you can do. But we just want to sort of shout out what we believe can really do to make change, some baselines.
Yep. So think about what agencies can do. The first thing is really, and this has been discussed on a couple different panels today, is just to be aware. We know that men and women are different. We think differently. We have different experiences in the workplace especially. And the male leadership isn't always aware of that. Even the great ones, even the ambassadors, we know that unconscious bias exists. So the first thing is to really be aware, which obviously all of you already are. We know that transparency is important, and we know that money matters. So just follow in the steps of the previous panel, the Martin Agency, and do a wage audit. We can see, she spoke about the impact that it has. And be really transparent about salaries. Go Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence and just show what people are making. That's the only way that you can stand up there and say, yes, with full confidence, men and women are paid the same. We saw those numbers on discrimination and harassment, and the bottom line is no one should feel uncomfortable, God forbid, harassed or anything like that in the workplace. So it's time to have a no tolerance policy on sexual harassment and be something that we really stick to as agencies. And we need to create better and more targeted pathways to leadership for women. And this isn't, fluffy stuff we've heard before. We're talking about taking advantage of the women at the top who are there and who are willing. We heard this morning, we talked about how important sponsorship and mentoring are. But a lot of people don't know the first steps, don't know how to go about it. How do we reach out? And we're going to tell you in a minute a little bit more about how 3% is going to be able to support you on that with very specific pathways to leadership for women. And then finally, you want more diversity? Enlist the help of the creative women and people of color at your agency when you're prospecting new hires. It was one of the first things this morning that everybody wrote down, right? Like hires like. So engage the people that you have to create the diversity that you want at the workplace.
So that's what agencies can do. But then we at 3%, Kat, Erin and I asked, well, what can we do? Where do we grow and how do we expand with you? So Kat's wearing all black because she's got a funeral, and we're like, wait, there's a future here. So we too are evolving, and we're thrilled to say that we're moving from awareness to activation, from conference to community, and we're doing it in partnership with you. So let's talk about how we're going to partner with agencies first. Agencies first. We're really looking forward to, or we are actually officially announcing a new program called 3% Certified. It will be a program where we'll be an independent auditing function where we're going to be creating independent, I need you to click.
Yep, it's clicked.
Okay, good. Independent auditing, which means we're going to go out, talk to the talent, find out what the talent is experiencing, look at the individual agency's programs and cultures and community, and then go beyond that to see what's the benchmark with not just the industry, but outside the industry. Find out how is your agency doing, and what can your agency uniquely do to make changes. We're going to analyze the heck out of that data and bring it back to you with recommended strategies and programs. That's the first start. The second piece is you're then going to go make change, and then we're going to actually come back and certify you. If you actually do make the change, you get that stamp. You earn that stamp by actually making change. And by earning that stamp, you're sending the message out that says, hey, this is an agency that really honors and respects diversity, honors and respects women, and that is a talent acquisition tool like there is none. So we're excited about that. Okay, so next, what else can we do? We realized that we actually wanted to not just talk with our agencies, but actually reach out and connect with our community in a much deeper, important way. And so we're creating an exclusive member platform. We're going to have webinars. We're going to have blind portfolio reviews. We're going to have one-to-one mentoring. We're going to have networking, and we're going to have, lastly, strategic insights and actually job postings. We can't wait to actually have a community. So it's across the industry, you can connect to each other and actually build a relationship around how you can get promoted and get advanced and get more women leaders in the industry, in 3%.
So I think we got through it all. That was a lot. That was a lot, and that was a lot fast. We were worried about getting it in before everybody's stomach started growling too much. But we want to hear your questions. We know we kind of dumped a lot on you. Believe it or not, it is the tippy top of the iceberg. There's so much more data. There's so much more insight that we have, and there's so much more that we're going to do as a 3% community to help the agencies and help you get to where we need to be, which is changing it to 50%. So we're going to be over in the Inspiration Zone, Inspiration Center from 1:30 to 2:30. So please come by, see us, ask us about what you've seen, ask us about what you didn't see, what you want to know, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you all for your attention and for being here.
Thank you.
Go eat.
Yeah.